Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. I appreciate you coming to visit my channel. Thanks for watching, and if you wouldn't mind, hit the like button before you leave. That helps out a great deal. Today, I would like to do something that I don't do very often, and that's to make something sort of floral. With Easter coming up, I thought I'd make some lily earrings today for a change. I have a little design that's kind of based on some that my wife bought, I don't know, 30 years ago somewhere. And it's similar to those, so I kind of like the style, and I'm going to kind of duplicate it a little bit with some changes. Before we get started, though, I wanted to give a special shout out to all my subscribers. If I haven't passed 2,900, I will today probably. That amazes me and astounds me, and I want to thank you for all your support. In addition, I wanted to thank my patrons over on Patreon. I'm getting a growing group over there. There's all sorts of talented people. If you're interested in being part of that, or if you want to see some other ways to support them, check out the video description. There's a link to Patreon. There's a link to my website if you want to see some jewelry for sale. There's a link to my merch page. There's a link to buy me coffee in case you just want to give me a tip. There's all sorts of cool things there, and you should check out those links before you leave. But with that being said, let's get started on the project. Okay, so the only materials we'll need for this project are some 26 gauge sheet, a little 18 gauge round sterling silver wire, a little bit of 20 gauge round sterling silver wire for the ear wires on these, and then some twisted wire that's just two pieces of 18 gauge twisted together. And we're going to use that for the little heads on the, I don't remember whether it was the stamen or the pistil. It's been a long time since I was in school, so. But those parts that stick out of the center of the flower. So that'll be the end of those. All right, so let's see. There we go. Okay. So basically, this is what they're going to look like. They're going to have kind of a cone shape that's made out of a piece of sheet that's shaped like this, kind of like a pear shape. And then we'll roll it into that cone shape, and we'll stick an ear wire through there, and we'll have these little pistils or stamens or whatever they are that stick out of the center of the flower here coming out. And I think we'll be done then, other than polishing. So they're a pretty simple project, but they end up looking pretty cool. Here's my prototype. So kind of see how that's going to look. I'll do a little neater job on these ones, hopefully. But in general, I think that's going to be a cool looking little flower. So let's get started. I think to start with, let's make those little things for the center. If you cut too short of pieces of twisted wire like this, the two wires will come apart. So in order to prevent that from happening, I'm going to flux this and solder it so a little bit of solder runs along the whole seam so it'll stay together when I cut little short pieces of it. It's a good project for springtime. I did a flower ring a little while ago if you want to see that. Put a link in the video description up there if you want to check that out. It's a cone flower. I was kind of pleased with the way it came out. Alright, okay, so let's put a little solder in this thing. We shouldn't have to add too much in here, just enough to kind of wicks along that seam that goes all the way down the whole thing. shouldn't run the risk of unraveling anymore. Okay. So I think looking at my prototype here, I'm going to cut a bunch of, probably 8 of them since there's 4 in each one. So we'll do at least an inch for the big one. Probably end up cutting these all down a little bit. I want them to all be a slightly different length. So these will be the biggest ones for each earring. We'll do one a little bit smaller. And one a little bit smaller. Alright. Let's do this. I'm going to file a flat end on each of these. Okay. I'm going to cut a few of these. Just about, oh, I don't know, 3/16 of an inch long-ish. 3 or 4 millimeters. Do 8 of them. Doesn't matter if they're slightly different because nature is never exactly the same, so you can have a couple that are a little longer than the other ones. There's 8 of them. Okay. Now, let's just put these guys up against the ends of these wires. We'll put the side that isn't bevel cut, hopefully. Chances are there's enough solder on these twisted wires that I just did to connect them there, but I'm probably going to pick a little bit on each one just to make sure that we have a good solid seam. You don't want nobody wants their piston to fall off. How embarrassing would that be? If you're having trouble getting them to solder together, make sure they're touching. Solder doesn't jump gaps very easily. Unfortunately, that'd be nice if it did sometimes. Well, I suppose it's good that it behaves relatively predictably. So, let's file the ends just a little bit. Most of the pictures of this sort of flower that I looked at have 6, I guess they're pistils, and then 1 stamen in the middle. I am making earrings that are representative but not exact, so these are not exact copies of an actual flower, they're just kind of to give us an idea. One of the things I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to solder together each one of these to another one so that it doesn't solder all the way up the whole length. So it's just going to kind of put a lot of solder down there. Putting a little excess solder on these just because I'm going to be shoving these inside of that cone and heating from the outside in order to reflow the solder. So in a sense, I'm doing some sweat soldering here because I'm putting it in a place where it's going to be able to reflow and attach these to something else. That's why I'm using quite a bit of solder, so that there's plenty in there when I stick it inside of the little cone. Okay, I got lots of solder on each of those. For the ear wires, we're going to ball up the end and add some solder. So, make them about that long. Set these guys off to the side for the moment. And these ones, this is that 20 gauge used for the ear wires. I want to get kind of a ball on the end there and melting that end. I like that. And then I'm actually going to pick some solder onto those balls. Okay, we'll set these guys off to the side for now. So if you look at your cone here, it comes to a point down here, but the part up here is rounded. It basically translates into a pear shape, like I was talking about earlier. So I used this little stone. I used this for the size of the circle. Not a stone, actually, it's a piece of glass. But so if I cut it off, that and kind of got a circle there, and then we can bring it to a point up here. like that. I think I'll use this as a kind of a template to get the next one. Find a spot over here where I can do it. On there now. I'm going to file the point just a little bit so I don't keep stabbing myself. Alright. I think we need to kind of figure out where the top is here. Central point, kind of. And I'm just mostly going to eyeball it, but straight up from here is about right there. Straight up from there. About right there. So, I think what I'll do then is I'm going to start using my round nose and start kind of doing this a little bit. You can use other pliers if you need to in order to keep things shaped the way you want them to. Kind of want this round bottom part to be sort of roundy. That. See, there's nothing very sophisticated about doing this. I'm just kind of bending these so they overlap. So that's going to be one of them. Might need to do a little bit of kind of like to make this nice. I made some bends here that weren't very smooth, so once I got it kind of where I want it to be, I can go back and neaten things up a bit. This one was pretty neat from the get-go. I did a better job on the first one. So, remember we made these ear wires with a little ball on the end and it's got some solder on it. Just put that through there. Here's the other one that has some balled up solder on the end. So in theory, as long as we have these touching, it should solder in there pretty well as long as we flux everything. I might throw a little extra solder on there just in case I want to add some to make sure it's good. Plus, I guess while we're here, make sure you can still see what I'm doing here. Might as well solder these seams shut so they're solid. Trick is not melting the wires on these ones because their wires are pretty thin. Most of the heat's going to go down here on the flower part. A little more solder down here just to make sure we got a good seam. And nothing comes off. We'll cool these off and evaluate them. Okay. So let's take these other things now. I'm going to snip these down just a little bit. Now, in theory, there should be plenty of solder in there. So when I solder this one, I should solder those in. I'm trying not to solder them to the back though, so they're kind of loose. Let's see. Let's check and see if those are in there or not. Nope. Okay, we're going to try that again. I'm going to add a little more solder to these. Okay, let's give this another try here. think those ones stuck that time. We'll see. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to heat that one up and throw it in the pickle for a while. Let's see if we can't do this one. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of solder inside of this one, just like we did on the other one. A little more solder on these guys. I guess we'll see if they're really getting there good, but I think they are. One of those ends bent a little bit, but I think I just straightened it out with the pliers probably. So let's let those pickle, and then we'll clean them up and polish them. You could tumble those if you wanted to, you could oxidize them if you want to, but we'll see how they look and then we'll go from there. Alright, stay tuned for the final product. Okay, so I got them polished up, and I may do a little bit of playing with how these things sit. These ones got a little bent when I was polishing them. You probably should leave them a little bent, but I kind of like the real straight look. Makes it look kind of sleek. Since we soldered this 20 gauge wire on, which I normally use half hard for ear wires, but since we soldered it to something, it's going to be real soft again. So in order to work harden that, I'm going to twist it a little bit, just by turning the end up like that, and then rotate this a few times, and that'll work harden the entire length of it. You don't want to get too crazy because you'll twist it right off of the top, but if you want it to be a little stiffer, that'll help. Okay, so usually on little earrings like this, I bend them towards the front slightly. And then I usually use a round pencil, just any old round pencil you have laying around. Create an ear wire going around there. I also push in with my finger a little bit like that. Kind of a nice ear wire going here. See if I can get them pretty close here. And we'll just cut them off around the same point. Probably neaten it up just a little bit. Usually tweak the end a little bit like that. And then if you have one of those little cuppers, you could try those. I've found the little handheld ones don't do much. So I just kind of usually file it down and smooth it out. Alright. Got a couple of little lily earrings. I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end of the video. Thanks for watching. All right, well that was the lily earrings. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And I'd love to have you subscribe. But before you do, check out a couple of other videos. I got lots of valuable content here, especially if you're a beginner. There's lots of good content for that. And there's even lots of ideas for people who have a little more experience doing this. So check those out. Check out the video description for some various links that are important. If you want to check out the Patreon or buy me a coffee or my website or the merch page, those are all there in the video description. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I appreciate all of your comments and suggestions in the comment section, so feel free to do that as well. And I look forward to seeing you on another video soon. So take care. Happy silversmithing.